In 2024, Europe's stunning landscapes and historic cities hide a more sobering reality. Several countries are on the brink of collapse. From staggering population declines to crippling economic struggles, these once thriving nations are now facing a downward spiral that could change the continent forever. Whether it's the lingering aftermath of financial crises, political instability, or devastating wars, the future looks uncertain for these European countries. Curious to see which nations are in freefall and why? Join us as we dive into the 10 fastest collapsing European countries in 2024. You won't believe how quickly they're unraveling. Number 10. Croatia. Croatia's demographic crisis is one of the country's most pressing issues in 2024. Over the past decade, the nation has seen a sharp decline in population, exacerbated by an aging society and substantial emigration. As of 2023, Croatia's population was estimated to have fallen below 3.8 million, down from 4.2 million in 2011, and the situation is expected to worsen. The combination of low birth rates and a mass exodus of young workers seeking better opportunities in Western Europe is crippling the labor market. Tourism, which once accounted for around 20% of Croatia's GDP, is no longer enough to sustain the economy. The over-reliance on this sector has made the country particularly vulnerable to external shocks, like the COVID-19 pandemic, which devastated the global travel industry. Moreover, many Croatian regions, particularly the inland areas, suffer from underdevelopment, making it difficult for the country to diversify its economy. The government has attempted to incentivize Croatians to stay by offering financial incentives and housing subsidies, but these have had limited success. In the next few years, Croatia must prioritize creating a more diverse and innovative economy. Otherwise, its reliance on tourism and shrinking workforce will continue to hinder its growth. Projections suggest that without significant intervention, Croatia's labor force could shrink by an additional 10% by 2030, a critical blow to an already fragile economy. Number 9. Greece. Although Greece has taken significant strides since the debt crisis of the early 2010s, the country remains one of Europe's weakest links in 2024. With an unemployment rate that hovers around 11% and even higher among young people, Greece struggles to retain talent. Nearly 500,000 Greeks have left the country since 2010, many of them highly educated professionals who have relocated to countries like Germany and the UK for better opportunities. Greece's public debt remains one of the highest in the world, standing at over 180% of its GDP, and it continues to burden future economic prospects. While some sectors like tourism and shipping provide a cushion, they cannot mask the deeper structural issues. The country's infrastructure is outdated, public services are stretched thin, and income inequality is growing. Compounding these issues is an aging population, with 22% of Greeks aged 65 or older. This places enormous pressure on the social security system, making it increasingly difficult for the government to maintain pension and healthcare provisions. Greek youth, faced with limited job prospects and stagnant wages, are increasingly frustrated, creating a tense social environment that could lead to further instability. Despite efforts to reform its economy and attract foreign investment, Greece's recovery remains fragile, and its future is uncertain. With slow growth projected at 1.5% for 2024 and limited industrial diversification, Greece could continue its slow economic decline unless it can address these deep-rooted issues. Number 8. Italy. Italy, one of Europe's largest economies, is also one of its most troubled. In 2024, the Italian economy is expected to grow at a meager 0.9%, according to the IMF, as it continues to grapple with high levels of public debt, stagnant growth, and political instability. Italy's public debt now stands at over 150% of its GDP, a staggering figure that severely limits the government's ability to invest in the future. An aging population is exacerbating Italy's problems. With 23% of Italians aged 65 or older, the workforce is shrinking rapidly, while pension costs and healthcare spending are ballooning. Italy's fertility rate is among the lowest in Europe, at just 1.24 children per woman, far below the replacement rate of 2.1. This demographic time bomb threatens the long-term sustainability of the economy, as fewer workers will be available to support an increasingly elderly population. Italy's political system is notoriously unstable, with frequent changes in government making it difficult to implement long-term reforms. Corruption and inefficiencies in public administration further weaken economic competitiveness. While the northern regions of Italy, such as Lombardy and Emilia-Romagna, remain economic powerhouses, the southern regions suffer from chronic underdevelopment and high unemployment. Without addressing these systemic issues, Italy's economy could face further stagnation, dragging down its already fragile financial system and potentially creating spillover effects for the entire Eurozone. Number 7. Spain. Spain has been praised for its recovery after the 2008 financial crisis. But in 2024, the country faces new challenges that could lead to a rapid decline. Unemployment, though lower than in the previous decade, still remains around 12%, with youth unemployment alarmingly high at 30%. Spain's recovery has been uneven, with regions like Madrid and Catalonia thriving while others, like Andalusia, continue to suffer from high unemployment and economic stagnation. The Spanish economy relies heavily on tourism, which accounted for around 12% of GDP before the pandemic. Although tourism has rebounded, the sector remains vulnerable to global disruptions, such as pandemics or geopolitical tensions. Moreover, Spain's housing market is overheated, with real estate prices surging in major cities, pricing out locals and exacerbating income inequality. The demographic crisis is also hitting Spain hard. With a birth rate of just 1.24 children per woman, Spain is facing a population decline, especially in rural areas, where many towns are becoming ghost villages. By 2050, it is estimated that 1 in 3 Spaniards will be over 65, placing immense pressure on the pension system and healthcare services. Spain needs structural reforms to improve labor market flexibility, increase productivity, and attract investment in high-tech industries. Without these changes, Spain risks sliding into a long-term economic decline, characterized by high unemployment, low wages, and regional disparities. Number 6. Bulgaria. Bulgaria is one of Europe's fastest shrinking countries, with a population that has fallen by over 11% since 2001. In 2024, the country's population is projected to drop to 6.5 million, down from nearly 7 million in the 1980s. This decline is due to a combination of low birth rates, high emigration, and a rapidly aging population. Bulgaria's economic growth has been sluggish, with GDP growth expected to hover around 2.5% in 2024. The country remains one of the poorest in the European Union, with a per capita income that is just half the EU average. Corruption and weak governance continue to plague Bulgaria, discouraging foreign investment and stifling economic development. The country ranks poorly in Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, which is a major barrier to growth. Bulgaria's healthcare and education systems are underfunded and poorly managed, contributing to widespread dissatisfaction among the population. Many young Bulgarians are leaving the country in search of better opportunities abroad, further exacerbating the demographic crisis. With fewer young people entering the workforce, Bulgaria faces a growing pension burden, which could strain public finances. The country's future depends on its ability to reform its institutions, improve governance, and create an environment that encourages young people to stay and invest in the country. Without these changes, Bulgaria will continue to lose its population and fall further behind the rest of Europe. Number 5. Romania. Romania is facing one of the most alarming demographic collapses in Europe. Since joining the European Union in 2007, nearly 4 million Romanians have left the country, seeking better job opportunities in countries like Germany, Italy, and Spain. In 2024, Romania's population has dwindled to about 18.5 million, down from over 23 million in the 1990s. This exodus is driven by a combination of poor economic prospects, political instability, and corruption that discourages both foreign and domestic investment. While Romania's GDP has grown at a moderate rate, around 3.5% annually, the country struggles with high levels of poverty, particularly in rural areas. Nearly 40% of the population is at risk of poverty or social exclusion, according to Eurostat. This divide between urban and rural regions is particularly stark. While cities like Bucharest are modernizing, much of rural Romania remains impoverished and underdeveloped. Lack of infrastructure in these areas stifles economic opportunities, pushing more Romanians to emigrate. Romania also faces significant challenges in governance. Corruption remains endemic, and despite multiple efforts to reform, the country ranks poorly in global governance indicators. These issues continue to erode public trust in the government, creating political instability. Moreover, the healthcare system is underfunded, and hospitals are often understaffed, which contributes to poor health outcomes and further encourages migration. The future of Romania's economy depends on its ability to retain talent, modernize its rural infrastructure, and improve governance. Without tackling these root causes, Romania will continue to see its population shrink, its economy stagnate, and its prospects for long-term growth diminish. Number 4. Portugal. Portugal is another European nation grappling with serious demographic challenges. Its population, which stands at approximately 10.2 million in 2024, is shrinking rapidly due to low birth rates and an aging society. The fertility rate in Portugal is just 1.35 children per woman, one of the lowest in the European Union. Combined with an aging population, 22% of the population is over 65, Portugal's workforce is shrinking at an alarming rate. Economically, Portugal has made significant progress since the financial crisis of 2008 to 2012, but its recovery remains fragile. The country's public debt still stands at over 120% of GDP, and while the economy is expected to grow by about 2% in 2024, this is not enough to offset the demographic decline. Portugal's reliance on tourism and exports makes it particularly vulnerable to global shocks, such as pandemics or trade disruptions. Tourism accounts for nearly 15% of GDP, and any downturn in this sector could significantly impact the country's economy. Income inequality is another issue plaguing Portugal. Despite economic growth in some sectors, rural areas remain underdeveloped, and young people face limited job opportunities, leading to higher emigration rates. This brain drain further exacerbates the demographic crisis, as many of those leaving are highly skilled professionals who could contribute to the country's future growth. Portugal is at a crossroads. Without significant investment in infrastructure, education, and innovation, the country risks becoming one of Europe's fastest collapsing economies. If current trends continue, the population could drop by as much as 20% by 2050, creating an unsustainable pension and healthcare burden. Number 3. Latvia. Latvia is facing a demographic collapse of extraordinary proportions. Since gaining independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, the country has seen its population shrink from 2.7 million to about 1.8 million in 2024. The reasons for this are multifaceted, but emigration and low birth rates are the primary drivers. Young Latvians, particularly those with higher education, are leaving the country in droves to seek better opportunities in wealthier EU nations like Germany, the UK, and Sweden. The population decline is so severe that Latvia is projected to lose nearly one-third of its citizens by 2050 if current trends continue. This exodus is creating severe labor shortages, which in turn hampers economic growth. Latvia's GDP growth in 2024 is expected to be around 2.1%, one of the lowest in the European Union, primarily due to the shrinking workforce and declining consumer base. The country is heavily reliant on agriculture and light manufacturing, sectors that are being hit hard by the lack of workers. Income inequality is also on the rise, with rural areas being particularly hard hit. In many parts of Latvia, the unemployment rate remains above 10%, compared to the national average of 6.4%. Additionally, Latvia's healthcare and education systems are underfunded, contributing to widespread dissatisfaction and further encouraging emigration. The healthcare system in particular faces severe challenges, with rural hospitals and clinics frequently understaffed, leading to poor health outcomes. Unless Latvia can find a way to reverse these trends, the country faces a demographic and economic collapse. The government has introduced measures to incentivize young Latvians to stay, such as housing subsidies and tax breaks, but these have so far been insufficient to stem the tide. Number 2. Hungary. Hungary is a nation at a crossroads in 2024, facing both political and economic challenges that threaten its stability. Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government has been accused of undermining democratic institutions, leading to tensions with the European Union. This political instability is causing uncertainty in Hungary's business environment, discouraging both foreign and domestic investment. Economically, Hungary has struggled to maintain consistent growth. In 2024, the GDP is expected to grow by just 1.8%, a figure well below the EU average. This is partly due to the government's policies, which have focused more on political consolidation than economic reform. Corruption remains a significant issue, and Hungary ranks poorly on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. This deters foreign investors and stifles innovation in critical sectors like technology and manufacturing. Moreover, Hungary is facing a severe labor shortage, exacerbated by emigration and a low birth rate. Since 2010, over 500,000 Hungarians have left the country, seeking better opportunities in Western Europe. With a fertility rate of just 1.49 children per woman, Hungary's population is aging rapidly. By 2050, nearly one-third of the population is expected to be over 65, creating a massive pension burden and straining healthcare services. The Hungarian government has attempted to address these issues with family-friendly policies, offering financial incentives for couples to have more children. However, these policies have had limited success. Without significant reforms in governance and economic policy, Hungary risks further stagnation and a continued exodus of its young workforce. Number 1. Ukraine. Ukraine, already a country facing economic challenges, has been pushed to the brink of collapse due to the ongoing war with Russia. Since the invasion began in 2022, Ukraine has lost millions of its citizens, with an estimated 8 million fleeing the country and another 5 million internally displaced as of 2024. The conflict has devastated Ukraine's economy, with GDP shrinking by 30% in 2022 alone and continuing to contract in subsequent years. The country's infrastructure has been heavily damaged, particularly in key industrial areas like the Donbas region, further limiting economic recovery. The war has also decimated Ukraine's labor force. Many of those who have fled are young professionals, leading to a brain drain that will take years, if not decades, to reverse. Additionally, millions of men are conscripted into the military, leaving industries like agriculture, manufacturing, and technology short-staffed. Ukraine's agricultural sector, once a global powerhouse, has been particularly hard hit, with millions of hectares of farmland rendered unusable due to the conflict. Ukraine's public debt is skyrocketing as the country relies on international aid and loans to fund its military and reconstruction efforts. By 2024, public debt is projected to exceed 100% of GDP, putting immense pressure on future generations. The healthcare system, already strained before the war, is now in a state of collapse, with many hospitals destroyed and medical professionals fleeing the country. While Ukraine's resilience in the face of aggression has been inspiring, the long-term economic and demographic consequences of the war are severe. Even if the conflict ends in the near future, Ukraine will face decades of rebuilding and recovery, with many experts predicting that it could take at least 20 years for the economy to return to pre-war levels.